Dan Rubenstein, week 13, just about in the books. My good friend out there in the heart of the Midwest, Chicago, Illinois, Big Ten country.
That's true.
We'll get to that in a little bit. Did you not refer to this as Shatterday?
I did, Ty. And it was mostly before the goof, for the pun, not necessarily for my belief that the angel of death was going to rain down blood on college football teams aspiring to get at-large bids for the college football playoff, potentially based in the southern portion of the United States. But here we are, Ty.
Here we are, Dan. Shatterday. Yeah.
Wow.
We have a lot to discuss. To those of you listening live, watching along at home, we appreciate you staying up late with us. For those of you listening early on Sunday, throughout the day on Sunday, maybe in the car on the way to work on Monday. Yeah, we've got a lot to discuss. We're going to order this episode by conference. It feels like that's really the only way to tell the story of week 13, by going power conference by power conference, working our way through into the group of five, because we had some stories emerge there.
Of course.
As well. It was definitely a jam-packed weekend. As you mentioned, there was clearly chaos in the SEC. We had a couple ranked teams lose. We had, obviously, the big game of the day. We did a long stream for the Indiana-Ohio State game earlier in the day. That one did not end up being what we would classify as a nail-biter, but there were other games in the Big Ten, notably Penn State, Minnesota, that were. We could talk about that. The Big 12 cannibalizing itself once more. Can talk about that, and we can give folks an update as to where things stand in the SEC as well as, or ACC, excuse me, as well as where Notre Dame fits into all of this chaos now on the backside of week 13. Dan, what was your, I guess, lasting impression from what we saw? So we did the long stream earlier in the day, but we spent the remainder of our Saturday going through and watching all these games. I was, as a college football fan, it's like sort of detached from any rooting interests. These are the weekends that I think make college football special, because we came into it with one like big headliner, one big top five matchup, and some other games that, okay, you had ranked teams on the road. Alabama's on the road. Ole Miss is on the road. Texas A&M is on the road.
Yeah.
Penn State's on the road. And these are the weeks that you have just as a fan from afar where you look at them and you wonder, okay, are there any upsets lurking?
Sure.
What's lurking out there? Why should I watch for 12 hours this Saturday? And college football proved, again, if nothing more, flawed as it may be, it still has weeks like this in it. And that's what makes it special.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's late in the season. Teams are as thin as they're probably going to be all year. You're on the road if you're one of those teams that were mentioned. We just need to get into it right now. But yeah, do you want to start in the SEC? You want to start in the Big Ten?
No, I think the SEC is the right place to start. We had Alabama number 7, Ole Miss number 9, and Texas A&M number 15 all go down. Which of these upsets stood out the most to you? Because I think you can make a case for either of those three.
Sure.
For me, I think it was Alabama losing in the manner that they did to Oklahoma.
Yeah. Score not exactly indicative unless I've received some sort of, or I haven't seen some sort of indication of the weird phantom penalty that went against Alabama when Ryan Williams caught the incredible touchdown pass. Obviously didn't make a difference, but yes, final score 24-3, yes?
Correct.
Oklahoma's defense came up big, and I like to tout the theory. It's not my theory. It's just general common sense at this point that if you are an underdog at home with a rowdy crowd and a good defense, that's a nice position to be in if you're the type of person who likes to wager on games. Oklahoma, in theory, was that team heading in, but they have laid some absolute eggs in that position before. And whether it was the turnovers against South Carolina, whether it was, not at home, but the performance or lack thereof against Texas and Dallas, that even with a strong defense, they weren't exactly feisty this year.
Sure.
And so for them to come out, make the plays on defense, come out with the game plan that they had to limit Jalen Milroe. That's how you say it, right? Jalen Milroe.
Milroe. Yes. Come on.
I'm in my head, Ty. That they were sideline to sideline with him, forcing him to make either an incredible throw or struggle. That was incredible to watch. Jackson Arnold was more legs than arm, which is fine because that's a working game plan against tonight's version of Alabama. they came out and they surprised them. They jumped lanes. Obviously, the pick six and the interception that was a near pick six. Like, it was one of those nights for Alabama in a terrible way, and it was one of those nights for Oklahoma and in an incredible way. Heads up, smart playing, and just erasing defensive line play from Oklahoma.
234 yards for Alabama.
Yeah, that's nothing
in this game. And we knew that Oklahoma had a good enough defense, but defense can only be one half of the equation unless you're the Iowa Hawkeyes or someone of that nature. It's been a struggle for Oklahoma on offense. And to your point, yeah, it felt like by using Jackson Arnold more as the running back to move the ball than the passer, they had something of a game plan here. He
25 carries.
25 times for 131 yards. So it was an effective game plan. They were able to move the football on the ground, and they were able to hold Alabama down in a really dramatic way. Again, holding them to 3 points, that jumps out to me. Alabama, by the way, now has 3 losses. Maybe we'll wait to the end of this segment to play the Dunzo just once for all 3 of them.
If it is indeed true. Yeah.
If it is indeed true, I don't know where things are going to stand with respect to the playoff now, being so Alabama has 3 losses. Ole Miss also now has 3 losses. Ole Miss went on the road, squared off against Florida, Dan.
Yeah.
This was a game that was going on around the same time, at the same time as our Indiana-Ohio State stream. So we had one screen going with the Indiana-Ohio State game. We had another one going with Florida-Ole Miss. I want to give credit where it's due to Florida.
Please.
Because Florida now has beaten ranked teams in consecutive weeks for the first time since 2008. And they got bowl eligible with this win. If you consider the context of this season for the Florida Gators, with all that they have had to deal with, totally separate from the fact that the schedule was murder coming into the season.
Especially this back half, yeah.
I mean, this was a really good job. Really good job this season, even if it were to end today by Billy Napier. And so him getting the vote of confidence and the way that he has brought this team along has been, I think, impressive now. With the benefit of hindsight, we've seen what has gone on, and good on Florida for getting bowl eligible. This game, though, was a car crash for Ole Miss. It was a car crash. In the post game, I don't know if you saw the presser that Lane Kiffin gave. I mean, he was very sullen.
Yeah.
Talked specifically about missed opportunities. And it's 100% true. They came up empty on 3 trips inside the red zone. They had a bunch of drops in the passing game.
A ton of drops, yeah.
At least 3 drops that could have gone for passing touchdowns. They also had 3 injuries with Trey Harris, who did leave in the second quarter, re-injured himself. They had a safety, Yam Banks, get carted off. Reese McIntyre, their center, also left the game. So on top of all that, just a brutal end to this game for Jackson Dart, who our Verballerhood mentioned in our little shared document that he had a bit of an existential journey the last 5 minutes or so in this
Buddy, I
game.
did just watching him.
It was rough.
Man.
I felt bad for him.
I felt so bad. Yeah.
I really felt bad for him because it was clear he was emotional about the way things went down. Threw a bad pick into triple coverage.
Yes.
Ole Miss ends up getting the football back on that ensuing drive.
There's like a minute left, yeah.
A minute left. He throws another pick, which is ruled incomplete. Meanwhile, he's on the sidelines already in tears.
Losing his mind, yeah.
Dries off the tears, comes back out there, immediately throws another interception, and again is beside himself.
The sort of miscommunication throw. He's going down the sideline. Receiver stops, expecting a different route or a different throw. And Florida is there to end the game at that point. Yeah, it's missed opportunities. It's Ole Miss didn't have, it seemed, any running back that they've been counting on this season available to them, whereas Florida, even down their best receiver, as they have been for some time now in Trey Wilson, DJ Lagway, I'm still like hampered by the hamstring situation, makes great throws downfield. It really was just running and doing better at capitalizing at without opportunities that Ole Miss, I mean, you mentioned it, right? It's when we talk about being a buttoned up team, whether it's Indiana, whether it's Oregon, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Texas against some not great competition, like anybody who is showing excellence,
yeah,
it's just stacking those little things. It's the focus for the receivers. It's bringing somebody down ahead of the sticks, whatever it is. And Ole Miss was just, I don't know if they were in their own heads. I don't know if just one thing led to another where things were compounding with those receivers, with Jackson Dart trying to do everything, obviously down the running backs that they were. And you mentioned the center and Trey Harris, but it seemed like it was just pressing, going to like the it was a defensive lineman, right? On the 4th and short moments, the short yardage moments that they weren't able to get done, that it was just one thing going wrong after the next. And Florida was just good enough to take advantage. Florida was good enough, like a good team should, take advantage. And that's a tough-fought win for the Gators at home to survive.
I give them a lot of credit. Ole Miss now, by the way, also with 3 losses. I would say most likely eliminated from the college football playoff ranks, but we can.
Somebody's got to be in this thing, though, Ty.
Somebody's got to be in it, and that was part of the equation that we were trying to discuss when we did our live stream earlier in the day.
Yeah.
In the event that we have not just one loss by Indiana, which we saw and we'll get to, but more losses on this Saturday in Week 13.
Yes.
What would that mean for who falls where? It's an interesting conversation. The other big one in the SEC was a game that just ended shortly before we hit start here on this. In 4 overtimes, the Auburn Tigers knock off Texas A&M, Dan. This was a game in which Auburn came out like a ball of fire early. A&M came on late. Auburn kicks a field goal to tie it up despite some of their strife in the kicking game. And they end up going essentially into penalty kicks, as we call it here on the show, where everyone's trading off trying to go for 2-point conversions. They make theirs. A&M doesn't make theirs in the, I guess, final stanza of this thing. 43-41 is your final.
So this is an Auburn team that loses 4 in a row. Started the season after the Alabama A&M game, losing 5 of 6 to FBS teams, including the Cowgirl. And that was whatever it was, 5 or 6 turnovers.
Yeah.
Why are you bringing up old stuff, Dan? I hear you. And then losing to Vandy and beating Texas A&M, top 15 Texas A&M in a wild game. They jump out to an impressive lead, big plays through the air, big stops, and then down to 2-point conversions. And obviously, if you're an A&M fan, just gutted for, I think it was Amari Daniels. It was a great play call, great execution, just the hands weren't there. And he was obviously just deeply, deeply sad over how that game ended, as anybody would be. I'm not trying to be funny.
It hit him in the hands, man. It hit him in the hands.
It hit him in the hands. You got to make that catch.
Perfect throw.
And an incredible catch by, it was Lambert Smith, right?
Keandre Lambert Smith, the Penn State
transfer. A great throw from Peyton Thorne. A clean game for Auburn for the most part. And even though they gave back the lead, just a nails kick to tie it and send it to overtime. It's another strong day of kicking for the most part. What a win for Auburn. The crowd rushes the field, and Auburn able to, despite everything that went wrong, despite being an elite loser for so long this year, losing in an incalculable number of ways. Scientists are still not fully sure if they can count the ways that Auburn has been able to do itself and be did in this year, pulling it out against Texas A&M. Incredible night for the Tigers.
I want to know where the A&M defense was.
Man, same. This is the defense that had been getting better over the course of games, and they did get better, but I want to
know where this defense was, because all of the guys that Auburn has that can beat you, beat them. Peyton Thorne throwing for 300 yards on you, it's a choice. Jarquez Hunter is going to get his, but he got it. He got it big time in this one by multiples, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Cam Coleman, freshman wideout, who we have loved all season.
So good.
Who we have joked is going to go elsewhere next year. Maybe that won't be the case. Who knows? 7 catches, 128, 2 scores. This is not so much to frown upon the job that Auburn did, because Auburn has had issues with its offense this season. This was a really good showing against an otherwise good defense. I just want to know if this was a look-ahead spot for A&M. This was part of why...
Well, that was the joke, right, where Mike Elko accidentally said,
exactly.
Make no mistake, we're thinking about Texas.
This is part of why we talked about this when we did the pregame show back on, Thursday. It wasn't so much the fact that the point spread was low, but there was this game against Texas that was on deck. We did wonder if there'd be a double look-ahead spot here, some potential for that, with Auburn also having Alabama on deck, which is now a huge game for Auburn. They can win that one and get bowl eligible, but just kind of a dud for A&M on the defensive side of the ball. It came back to bite them. Early in this game. They made a push at it late, and then again sort of fell by the wayside in overtime. So great win for Auburn. this does plunge the SEC into a bit of chaos, Dan. I'm not going to lie to you.
Right.
Those 3 teams that all lost today stood to be part of that playoff conversation. We can get to that maybe a little bit later on. I don't want to make this whole show about playoffs and scenarios and things of that nature, but just something to kind of file away in the back of your mind right now. We've got a very interesting situation developing within the SEC, just who's going to get to this championship game, but also who's going to make it through to the next round beyond that. Let's put a pin in that. Let's go to the Big Ten.
Please.
Because the big game of the week in the Big Ten was the Ohio State-Indiana game, which we did the stream during. But we also had Penn State truly surviving on the road against Minnesota. We had a wild win for Illinois.
Yeah.
Just an unbelievable way that Illinois beat Rutgers, which we could discuss. We had Nebraska getting bowl eligible for the first time since 2016. It's been a minute.
Yes.
Plenty of things to discuss on the Big Ten side of the equation, but Ohio State 38-15 over Indiana is probably where we should start.
I guess you didn't mention that it's been 4 field goals and a half for USC UCLA at time of recording right now. No,
the game is going on now.
You don't want to do live updates on
No,
USC UCLA Field Goal Fest 24.
I know. It's on NBC. We can get back to that one maybe on our Tuesday episode.
Okay.
But 38-15 was the final. We did the stream. We were talking, I think, a lot about what jumped out to both of us, which was Ohio State's ability to defend the pass. Not just to get to Curtis Rourke and upset his rhythm, but to just basically chop that part of the Indiana offense off.
Yes.
They were able to get something going on the ground here and there. But by that point in the game, it was too little too late. Ohio State had pretty much already run away with it. They forced 3 fumbles on the Indiana side of things, 2 of which came by virtue of their own skills, I would say, on defense, 1 on a strip sack, another on a strip as there was just a standard issue running play. Guy gets ball punched out. Another that was a mishandled snap on a punt that set Ohio State up with a short field. So there were these moments for Indiana that did come back to bite them for sure. But I think taken throughout the course of this game, the big lasting image for me is the fact that Ohio State's defense was just too much for these guys.
Yes. No, I think that's all correct. It's Ohio State at home, and if there were 2 elements of this game that Indiana wasn't quite ready to handle, it was Ohio State up front, including, Cody Simon had one of the games of his lives? He's only had one. Cody Simon, games of his life, depending on your feelings about reincarnation. And
right.
You want to go down this path? And that Indiana's secondary wasn't fully prepared to make plays against take your pick of Abuka or Carnell Tate early on, Jeremiah Smith, especially on the edge. He had a great fly sweep kind of action. Like, it was Indiana looking not quite ready, which is kind of okay, and Ohio State answering the call. Now, if you want silver lining for Indiana, it's that the defense mostly played all right, all things considered, with what Ohio State can do on offense. That it was an incredible punt return from Caleb Downs, nothing to do with Indiana's defense. And it was, I think, a 7-yard field after a snap slipped through a punter's hands. That's right. That accounted for 14 points. And so the score indicates 38-15. I think the over hit because of that late touchdown,
that's right,
if memory serves, for Ohio State. But by and large, the Indiana defense belonged on that field. I also want to give credit to Ohio State's offensive line. And even though they weren't really able to run the ball with any sort of force or consistency, Will Howard was clean.
Yeah.
This is a team down 3 starting offensive linemen, including the guy who started out playing left tackle and the guy who started playing center, arguably the 2 most important positions on the offensive line. And Will Howard was clean. Will Howard had time. It was not the story of this game. It was Indiana's offensive line and whatever Curtis Rourke's responsibilities are in terms of protection being engulfed by an incredible performance from Ohio State up front, who look like they could beat anybody in the country specifically because of what they can do when Jim Knowles seems to call the defense he wants to call.
Yeah, to your point, Will Howard, 22 of 26 passing, 201, 2 touchdowns, did have the pick.
Right.
Curtis Rourke, 8 of 18 passing for just 68 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
You take away that side of Indiana, make some sort of pedestrian. And that's
Yes.
what Ohio State was able to do. And I agree. I mean, I think two things can be true at once. Indiana did not look worthy as an offensive unit against this defense, but defensively, which has very quietly been the bigger triumph this year for the Indiana Hoosiers, they've played pretty good defense the full way through.
They did.
I thought they did, all things considered, a pretty good job. It may not appear that way if you look at the box score, but if you watch the game and if you understand these numbers in context, I don't think it was a bad performance by the Indiana defense at all. And I guess the broader point now, and the one that many people are going to try and argue over the next week or so, or at least till we get to Tuesday, did this harm Indiana's playoff chances at all? Should it harm Indiana's playoff chances at all? I would argue, given what else we saw around college football,
I was going to say, in that moment, perhaps.
In the moment,
given
perhaps.
the totality of the day, perhaps not.
Yeah, given that we saw those 3 losses on the SEC side, given that we saw a fair amount of chaos transpire in the Big 12 as well, they're going to fall. They should fall in the standings. But I think by the end of the conversation here, Indiana is still probably a playoff team.
I think likely, yeah. I think given that you're going to start comparing them to 3 loss teams at a certain point with Alabama and Ole Miss, and I don't know,
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with Tennessee. They have Vandy left, and I don't know. We'll see. Georgia has Georgia Tech, who likes making things weird, who snuck by NC State. Did they not Thursday night in a weird
30-29, yeah.
one? Yeah, you're absolutely right. By the way, just on the Jim Knowles thing, real savvy move to get to the quarterback before he can throw it and have your own corners get called for PI. You can't commit PI if you get sacked before a quarterback throws it. You can get defensive holding, of course.
Yeah.
But that's a nice little solution to some early over aggression from Ohio State corners, or namely Iggy, one corner. And I came away thoroughly impressed with Ohio State, and still impressed with Indiana, especially on defense. And the Indiana run game, I think, exposed a little bit in terms of maybe some over-aggression at times, or not staying gap sound up front for Ohio State on defense. But you knew that wasn't going to last for 4 quarters.
You knew that wasn't going to last. And by the way, by the time they started doing that,
yeah,
it was pretty much ball game.
They needed to connect more consistently through the air if they had any chance,
Yeah.
and they just didn't have. Literally, didn't have a chance. They didn't have the seconds to do it.
Yeah, you weren't going to come down from, at that point, 21 points, whatever it was, running the football, not against Ohio State. But again, 38-15, your final score. Let's go to Penn State and Minnesota.
Please.
God, Dan. My God.
Yeah, this is what Penn State does.
I made a Penn State Minnesota video that we posted on all of our social media accounts. We've been doing these vertical videos because that's more ways for people to find you, I guess. That's
Explain it to the kids, Ty.
Yeah, that's what they tell us. More people can find you that way. We made this video, posted it to the social feeds last week, talking about, this is the 25-year anniversary-ish of the 1999 upset of number 2 Penn State by unranked Minnesota. This is when Minnesota came to State College. They hit on a 4th and 16 sort of miracle tip drill play.
Yeah.
End up kicking a field goal at the gun from 32 yards to win.
We had a lot of notes that were like, my pappy and my grandpappy were never the same after that one.
Yeah.
It was great. Yeah.
So some of them died that day. I've never seen a grown man in tears like I did that day.
He was never the same.
Stuff like that, okay? Yeah. It's not just the 1999 game. There have been other instances, one in 2019. There have been other instances where Minnesota plays Penn State tight, where Minnesota finds a way to ruin Penn State's season. Penn State was lucky to get out alive. Lucky to get out of Minneapolis alive.
Yeah, as most people are.
I like Minneapolis.
No,
It's
I
a
was
nice
just
place.
kidding. Minneapolis is glorious. Yeah.
Penn State survives a block punt. They survive a blocked extra point that was returned for 2, which is how you knew things were going to be weird.
Mm-hmm.
The 9 points in total that came
with
off of those 2
PJ Fleck
blocks.
pointing the direction for the returners. No, that's the way to go. Thanks, coach. Thank you so much.
I thought that Minnesota played well enough to win this game. And you could debate whether or not PJ Fleck lost another one for him. They had an opportunity here. They were in this game. They were at home. They had Penn State on the ropes. I think Penn State came on and got better the deeper the game went.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, they had a hard time connecting with Tyler Warren, sort of to the point that we had made on a previous episode. Like, if you face up against a good physical defense that knows how to take him away to some extent, what does that mean for the rest of the offense? Early on, they couldn't really figure that out. As they got into the second half, they started involving Nick Singleton a little bit more in the run game. They started getting Tyler Warren a little bit more involved in the passing attack. In a weird way, despite the fact that this was damn near a loss for Penn State, this kind of felt like growth to me.
Okay.
Because they couldn't rely on the gadget plays. Minnesota did a really good job scoping those out. They needed to lean on other guys. Even Amari Evans, he was open a couple times deep, caught a deep touchdown earlier in this game. And Drew Aller, I thought, showed some growth.
Yeah, especially late in that one with the throw that iced it. Yeah.
I thought, again, he had a pretty good game, all things considered. So this is one of those games where, like, it's sort of the more to the story of 2024 in college football. Nobody is bulletproof, and everybody has seemingly had games just like this. Penn State is going to take its clunker win, and they're going to happily move on to next week against Maryland. They're probably going to host a home playoff game as a result of this. The feeling in the pit of my stomach right now, if you forget the fact that I'm a Penn State grad and I root for the team, if I were a Minnesota fan, I would be sick to my stomach. I would be so sick knowing that, again, this one was there. There have been a couple games like this for them this season. And you know I've been high on this Minnesota team. They've been at times disappointing. But it was there for them, man. They had this one. They could have done it. And at the end of the day, it's unfortunately like them finding a way to lose it. And Penn State wins 26-25.
Yeah, they don't get in the end zone in the second half. They opt for field goals. Obviously, there's that fumble. And so it's like you don't need exclusive in this moment at home with the defense that Minnesota has. You didn't exclusively need touchdowns, but it didn't seem like there was always aggression there with Minnesota. Maybe there were coin flip moments decision-wise, but no, I thought the general speed of Penn State's defense stood out to me, especially as the game wore on against Minnesota on offense. They were just like, well, it's a close game, but if there's something that's going to decide it, if there is like the thing that jumps off the screen right now, it's just like, I don't know, man. Abdul Carter keeps getting a jump that Minnesota just becomes a little bit warier every single play. And it just seemed like that sideline to sideline for Penn State's defense as the game wore on against Minnesota's offense.
Yeah, Zane Durant, their presence in the middle of their defensive line as well, number 28, they kept showing him. He had a good game, very quick off the ball, was able to make some game-changing tackles. It's something like 2 or 3 tackles for loss that were impactful in this football game. Penn State wins again. They've 10-1 now, 26-25 was their final score. Minnesota's got the game next week, the rivalry game. Penn State's got Maryland. We know how Penn State-Maryland usually goes in November, so more to come on that front. Just to round things out here in the Big Ten, Dan.
Are you going to make a follow-up video about Penn State in the opposite direction Penn State, Maryland? We're just like, well, guys, in the last decade or so, Penn State has won this game about 744-19.
I cannot tell you how many people message me on the sly.
Yeah.
I got them publicly, too, but people who message me on the sly, like, dude, why did you make that video?
Throwing
you
that
know
out.
what this means. You know you're trotting the black cat out there, and
That's
it almost came back to bite us. Illinois 38, Rutgers 31. Wild finish here. Illinois wins on a 40-yard touchdown pass to Pat Bryant as time expired. It was not a Hail Mary.
It was not thrown into the end zone.
It was not thrown into the end zone. It was a play during which,
just a play.
Rutgers had a bunch of guys over pursue Pat Bryant, reverse field, went the other direction, and ran into the corner of the end zone. Touchdown. They end up winning.
It was beyond that. It was an attempted long field goal that Greg Schiano tried to freeze the kicker on, called the timeout right before the snap and kick, missed the kick, but the timeout was awarded, and Brett Bielema was like, well, I don't know if he's making this after missing this, so let's figure out a play here. And Pat Bryant, absolute animal, and has been all season long. I have not watched a ton of this game. I flipped the channel when I saw it was back and forth, close, late, and holy hell, Rutgers. I watched that as it was happening and just mouthing to myself, not like that, guys, not like that, not like that. And then he got to the corner.
8-3 Illinois now. So Nebraska is bowl eligible. They won 44-25 over Wisconsin. Again, the first time since 2016. It's their first win over Wisconsin in their last 11 meetings.
Woo.
And not to harp on this game too much, but I actually thought the Holgorsen offense showed real growth. I thought they kept Wisconsin off balance, a pretty good Wisconsin defense, mind you. To put up 44 points against them is pretty good. Kept them off balance, seemed to be focusing on getting the best players the football.
Yeah.
Which is a novel concept in this world, but got the best players the ball, showed a fair amount of balance.
Yeah.
And they end up winning by a pretty sizable margin here, putting up over 40 points. Wisconsin needs to win the game next week in order to maintain their streak of 22 straight years of going to a bowl game. They are not currently bowl eligible, Dan.
It's another year of Emmett, though, right?
It is.
Stanford Emmett's and now Emmett for Nebraska?
Yep.
Yeah, I actually did pay attention to some of this game and did pay attention to the receivers blocking on the edge after Dana Holgorsen was, I don't know if you saw this presser from him, where he just had some quote where he was like, I came in here, we've got all these like big, strong receivers and nobody's blocking. If you want to catch a ball, you got to block. And they were blocking.
Yeah.
And they scored 35-plus points. Who knew that when you have a complete team effort and you get the ball to the right players, it works. So
it worked. It did work. It worked well. So good on them. Michigan also bowl eligible. They destroyed Northwestern 50-6. And Michigan State needs to win next week against Rutgers if they want to get bowl eligible, but they won earlier in the week by a 24-17 score over Purdue.
Yeah, which is kind of a loss in a win if you're playing that close to Purdue, the 2024 version of Purdue. But good for Michigan State.
Let's go to the Big 12, Dan.
Let's. Should we bring Warren Sapp on now to talk like a post-mortem? I know he's been wanting to come on to talk about Colorado, Kansas. Or we can go in any direction you want, Ty.
So we had a wild finish at the end of Arizona State BYU, but Arizona State wins. We had Kansas dominating Colorado.
Yes.
Iowa State surviving
Utah
of all teams. And we had a great shootout again, an old-fashioned Big 12 shootout between Texas Tech and Oklahoma State that I'll call out. But I don't know which one of these stood out the most to you. I think for me it was Kansas and what they did to Colorado.
So third straight win against an AP top 25 team as a team with a losing record, and I'll due respect to Kansas. Lost a lot of close, weird games, West Virginia, ASU, Illinois, whatever, but that's the difference between a good team and a flawed team is pulling out games late, and Kansas was unable to do that earlier on this year, and then suddenly had the chance to do it against Kansas State, didn't get it done, but took down Colorado, Iowa State, and BYU. So a nice reversal for Kansas. And do they have the opportunity to go to a bowl game?
They do. They've got to win next week.
Stomped Colorado on the ground repeatedly in embarrassing fashion. And Devin Neal, I think, close to 300 total yards between his catches and his runs.
Yep, 287 total, 4 total touchdowns. A really good game on the ground for him. A really good game on the ground for Kansas. They had 331 on the ground. They had 520 in total.
Yes.
The game plan was pretty straightforward from the Kansas side, and it's not something I guess we'll ever know if it was the plan going in or if it was the eventual plan coming out.
Or the plan once they listened to Warren Sapp, a quality control analyst, just go off on Kansas before the game. Yeah.
40 minutes and 11 seconds time of possession for the Kansas Jayhawks in this
I don't
game.
think I saw that number. That's wild.
That is a wild, lopsided number. And they ran at Colorado as a way of mitigating their own defensive woes because they are not a good defensive football team. To their credit, they played okay defensively, but
they've been better. They've been better. Yeah.
They have, but still it's a unit that on paper looked as if Colorado would be able to attack them.
Yes.
Can't attack them if they're not on the field. And that was the plan here.
True.
Kansas won 37-21. I felt like every time I looked at the quad box with this game that it was just Kansas with the ball. They had the ball the entire football game. It was wild.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a big win for them. As we look around the Big 12, it's not like Kansas has a shot to win this thing at this point. They've got more than enough losses, right? 4 losses in conference, 5 and 6 overall.
Yeah.
If you look up and down, though, this conference, there aren't a whole lot of teams that scare me the way that Kansas scares me right now. They are just on a heater. And they caught Colorado. They got them in Kansas City. They played
in
this
Arrowhead
Stadium, and they were able to get the big win. So this effectively knocks Colorado down a peg. Colorado still now in a 4-way tie atop the Big 12, along with Arizona State and BYU and Iowa State. There are all sorts of scenarios that maybe we can outline on the Tuesday episode. I don't want to drone on too long about those here, but this was a really big win for Kansas and a huge letdown loss for Colorado after people had started projecting them into the college football playoff.
Yeah.
After there had been talk about, they just flipped Julian Lewis, big-time recruit, flipped him from USC earlier in the week. There was just a lot of good momentum on this program. To lose in this capacity was really, I don't know, it's disappointing to say the least.
It's sort of the conclusion of a big stretch for Colorado in terms of big emotional games. You saw at times emotion going both directions, regardless of the Warren Sapp stuff. You saw Shedeur kind of go head over tails on just an absolutely brutal, dirty hit that was not called for anything.
That should have been called.
Just launching head first into his knees.
Yeah.
As it was just, I don't know.
That was a dirty call. That should have been a call for a dirty play.
For a dirty play. Yeah. And then Shedeur, as a referee, is trying to break up players in each other's faces, shoving a ref with no repercussions whatsoever. I don't know, man. Everybody needed to take a cool 5, it seemed. And Kansas took a cool 40 and just demolished them on the ground. And cool to see for Kansas to bounce back and to, keep their heads about them after a slow start.
The other bit of chaos, real chaos, in the Big 12 was Arizona State 28, BYU 23.
It's the most ridiculous game.
So BYU trailed 21-3 at half. Second half, they mount this feverish comeback. What ends up happening is this, okay? Arizona State has the ball late. They're in position to punch it in for a 2-score lead under a minute to go. Instead, they decide they're going to run backwards.
They're going to do like a weird cheesing video game thing.
They're doing like the Tecmo Super Bowl thing where they're just going to run around and try to eat the clock.
Yeah.
They do that on first down, on second down, on third down. I was on the phone with my cousin at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, Tony, I got to go. He's like, oh, what's everything okay? I'm like, yeah, I believe it's like fourth and goal from the 40-yard line.
Yeah.
I need to figure out how this is even possible. On fourth down, there are 7 seconds left. Kenny Dillingham does the thing again. He does it.
Mm-hmm.
He does the thing. Sam Levitt drops back, kind of takes a beat, chucks the ball up into the air.
Skies it, yeah.
The clock expires. It looks like it expires. The crowd rushes the field for I feel like it's the 8th time they've rushed the field this year in Tempe, but whatever.
Yeah.
Good for them. Everybody rushes the field. What turns out happening is there was still 1 second left. They reviewed it via replay. They confirmed it. It was the right call. But everybody's on the field. Kenny Dillingham is losing his mind.
On the refs. Yeah.
On the refs. Going nuts. Not a good look for him. We can come back to that.
Sure.
They got to then shuttle everybody off the field for one final Hail Mary play, which takes 20 minutes to do. Finally, BYU gets the ball back. Jake Retzlaff throws the Hail Mary short of the end zone, which is always kind of a bummer.
If I may, little sidebar here. Not PI, and I know they're never going to call that in that moment.
Sure.
With an Arizona State player in his small intestine as the ball is still in the air. I didn't mean for that to sound gross, Ty. I apologize immediately. But hanging all over him, draped all over his shoulders as the ball is in the air. Not PI, I guess is the kindest way I can say it. He comes down with it. He's short of the end zone. Game over.
Game over. Then they rush the field.
Yes.
Final score here, 28-23. Arizona State's still in a position to control its own destiny. They win next week. They're in the Big 12 title game. They win the Big 12 title game. They're going to be in the playoff. It's just crazy. Absolute craziness. right now going on in the Big 12, Dan.
Yeah, Kenny Dillingham looking. I think I messaged you that he looked like a potentially emotionally lost president of Delta Sig in the middle of a breakup. Looked 17, sounded 17, and it's not his fault for being upset at the way that the end of this game transpired. It is his fault the way he managed to not manage the clock at the end of that game like a professional college football coach. But yeah, him just like and then there was an actual because you couldn't get the words on the ESPN copy, and then or on the ESPN footage, and then there were like all the student phone videos of what he actually said, and man, not the brightest moment for his career. I'm rooting for him. I like him a lot. I loved his time at Oregon. I think he's really, really savvy. But man, just went ape. I'm gonna say ape shit. Ty just was nuts.
Yeah, he lost it a little bit.
Yeah.
By the way, a crazy onside kick in this game. I don't know if you saw that for Arizona State. One of those deals where they just sort of line it off a guy standing in the front row, and boom, they recover it.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. Arizona State.
Yeah,
wins 28-23. Iowa State survives Utah. Utah missed a game-tying 54-yard field goal with about 10 seconds left. This is a very good game, a back-and-forth game, as Iowa State holds serve, also in that four-way tie atop the Big 12. Elsewhere, we did have the shootout. Where is my sound? Not really of any true national significance, but that's sort of beside the point here on these Saturday Night Recap episodes, Dan. We had a vintage shootout in the Big 12 between Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State trotted out a freshman quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty good.
Yeah.
Very efficient. Ollie Gordon was back to looking like Ollie Gordon, had over 10 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. Baron Morton had over 400 yards on 50-plus attempts. Ultimately, it was an Oklahoma State snap over their quarterback's head that led to the victory.
Maya Luwaki Smith, Ty.
Thank you, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
That's what led to the victory. That's what allowed Texas Tech to pull away. But 56-48, nice little shootout here in Big 12 territory. We had wins from TCU, from West Virginia, from Baylor, and from Kansas State. Kansas State knocked off Cincinnati, Dan. But chaos will continue to ensue next week because we've got this big tie at the top, and who knows what's going to happen. Just feels like each week is a new verse in Big 12 territory.
Kind of bummed that we're not getting Bedlam. This would have been a real weird, fun year to have Bedlam. Unfortunately, TVs are more important than all of this. And speaking of a big tie at the top, Ty, happy birthday.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah, 29. Treasure it.
Let's go over to the ACC. SMU clinched a spot in the ACC title game by virtue of their win over Virginia. This was one that I called out. They were about a 9.5-point road favorite. This game was never close. Never close. Won 33-7, something of that nature. Nice win for SMU. They now get into that title game. Miami pulled away late from Wake Forest. The score ended up not being all that close, 42-14. But they are now within striking distance as well. They got to win next week against Syracuse in order to get into that title game. But it suddenly is very interesting in the ACC with respect to this title game and how it fits into the broader playoff discussion.
Yeah.
Because we had all these teams in front of SMU lose. We have Miami, who has been sitting there just perched in the top 10 now for a while, despite the fact that they've got a loss.
Yep.
And it stands to reason that if we've got a close ACC championship game between presumably SMU and Miami, there's a case to be made that both of those teams should get in. And one of the SEC teams that everybody likes to talk about is going to get left out. One or more, because these are teams that have not lost late, at least not yet.
Yeah, and have not lost in to a crazy embarrassing team or in crazy embarrassing fashion. SMU lost early to obviously a very good BYU. Miami losing to a decent at times, especially when they're healthy, Georgia Tech. And so you'd like to see some sort of more recent signature victory, perhaps. But I mean, all things considered, they both beat Louisville. Like, there's a lot impressive about both of these teams, and specifically about Miami today. It's the defense coming to play. This wasn't a 52-28 win for the Canes. This was a pretty thorough defensive performance for Miami, which is what we've been looking for. It's Wake Forest, but still.
They had some long runs from Mark Fletcher and Jordan Weil late.
Oh, dude.
Which is what gave Miami the clearance it needed to pull away and make this one look like more of a runaway train.
I am having a lot of feelings about Jordan Lyle.
Yeah, he's good.
He's real good. He runs angry. He is special.
I like him. Elsewhere in the ACC, we had a big win for Boston College, 41-21 over UNC. Syracuse beat UConn. We had the game that you mentioned earlier between Georgia Tech and NC State earlier in the week, 30-29. Tech won. Louisville all over Pitt, 37-9. Cal, 24-21 over Stanford. Clemson, big over the Citadel. Florida State, Dan.
Dozens of points.
It's their first win since September.
Yes.
Which is kind of hard to believe.
Over Cal. So they beat Cal in September.
That's right.
And Cal takes home, because this is like a pseudo rivalry week. We had some of those. Cal takes home the Stanford Axe.
Yep.
In their win, their comeback win over Stanford. Stanford, I think, jumped out to a 14-0 win. Fernando Mendoza, I don't know if you saw, pretty emotional after the win, which, love how the importance that so many of these guys place on these big games. And just mostly irrelevant, but did you happen to see the name? Because nobody could really do anything beyond Cal throwing the ball. Cal's leading receiver, Annnnd Grizzle?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, just making sure.
Annndd
I read
Grizzle.
that correctly. Annnnd with a D on the end. Annndd Grizzle. Okay.
Annndd Grizzle. Love it. And Duke won. 31-28 over Virginia Tech. You liked Duke this week. You liked them a lot.
I liked them a lot. Virginia Tech with no Kyron Drones, completely unable to handle Duke up front on the Virginia Tech offensive line. These guys were just under a ton of pressure all game long, and Duke harassed and harangued and engulfed.
I'm going to catch some flack for doing this, but
please.
Guess who just got murdered?
Notre Dame all over Army, Dan.
I tried to tell you, Ty.
I tried to tell you.
I said I would take Notre Dame minus like 26, right?
Take them minus whatever.
Yeah.
This was a dominant effort from start to finish, 49-14. Notre Dame had more rushing yards than Army had as a team. 273 on the ground on 29 carries, 5 touchdowns. An incredible moment earlier in this game from Jeremiah Love. He just high hurdles a guy jumping in, clears him by like a foot.
Mm-hmm.
He had 7 carries for 130 and 2 scores in this football game. Notre Dame looked really, really good. And it's not a huge surprise. We both felt like it was a mismatch coming in. The point spread was low. We both were in on Notre Dame. This is not to say I told you so, but we told you so. This felt like it was a mismatch.
It was a we told you so. Yeah.
It ended up being a mismatch, and that's no disrespect to the fine U.S. Army.
Yeah.
Which I think has had an incredible season and will go into the American title game next week with still, I think, a fair amount to play for. I do think, though, this loss here has put to bed any notion that Army's getting in the playoff. I think it's really coming down to, at this point, Boise State and or Tulane.
Was this indicative of anything for Notre Dame? Like, did you come away learning anything new that they were able to take care of business away from home against a team that plays an unusual brand of football? But they had Navy already, obviously.
They had Navy. Look, I said coming into this game that I expected it to be similar to the game we saw against Navy, and it was. It was extraordinarily similar. The defense is very fast.
Did Howard Cross play?
The defense is very, very fast. Howard Cross did not play in this football game.
Okay. And as you indicated, probably wouldn't matter. Didn't seem to matter.
It didn't seem to matter. You're not going to run exclusively against Notre Dame and win. And we saw instances in this game where Army, you could tell, was used to getting to the edge on some sort of speed option or pitch play, and they couldn't get to the edge. On Notre Dame, they were just quicker. They were more athletic. When you get an option team in a hole, the way Notre Dame got this team in a hole, they're not going to be able to throw to come from behind. At that point, they are counting on breakdowns. They are counting on miscues, mistakes. When you get the ball, in order for you to set them up so that they can climb back into this thing. But Notre Dame just didn't. They didn't do that. They didn't give Army a chance to really claw back into this at all. So I give the U.S. Army plenty of credit. This was, I think, a game that they had circled for a while. It was a cool occasion playing this one at Yankee Stadium.
And they both got to dress kind of alike, which was very confusing for me as I watched this game. That
There
was
was
like,
some-
Notre
there
Dame got a
was-
punt blocked. Nope, Notre Dame was the one who blocked the punt.
There was some, let's say, discussion on the text threads about Notre Dame's jerseys, which I liked, but there were some who didn't.
Well, they looked like Army.
They looked a little bit like Army, yeah.
It's a very weird decision.
I liked it. I liked the jerseys. I thought they were better than most of their alternates.
Well, I'm just
but
saying, wear them when you play Florida State. Wear them
I
when you
understand.
play Stanford or something.
I understand.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
But this was a really good performance from Notre Dame. I don't know if it's teaching us anything new. Next week against USC may teach us something new, but not this week. This was something that we saw earlier in the year against Navy. They won resounding fashion.
Yes.
The other game I want to call out here, Boise State surviving Wyoming.
Yes. Elevation, baby.
17-13, Dan. So, interesting game. I'm curious to see if this moves any playoff needles.
That Boise, again, has struggled to separate from an inferior opponent.
That they have now had a couple really sloppy offensive performances. And it's overshadowed a bit by the fact that they've got Ashton Ginty, who now has over 2,000 rushing yards in the season.
Only had 9 yards per carry tonight.
Only 9 yards. He came out of the game briefly in the third quarter with an ankle injury, but then came back in the fourth quarter, helped Boise seal the dub. I don't know. It's there's just so much talk about Ashton Ginty that it feels to me it is masking the fact that Boise has been sloppy offensively.
They've been sloppy. They came into this game 5th nationally in points per drive. And doesn't mean they aren't doing that in a sloppy way. I just don't think they have anything in the way of a consistent passing game that would open up bigger plays, bigger leads. I mean, the defense is not special, but they're winning games, and they have maybe the best offensive skill player in the country, or one of the 4.
Sure.
And I don't know, being able to control the game on the ground like that and coming out with wins. We don't have to view a wildly successful Boise season through the lens of the playoff, so we can just say, hell of a year for Boise State thus
It's been
far.
a hell of a
Hope
year.
We can watch a lot more Ashton Ginty.
It's been a hell of a year, and
Yeah.
I would like to see Ashton Ginty in the playoffs. I would.
Yeah.
I would like to see what he could do against, better competition. But just something to keep your eyes on. All right, something to keep in the back of your mind there.
Sure.
Boise State wins by a 17-13 score again.
As Tulane has been a wrecking ball as well.
Tulane's been a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
We had the Oregon State win over Wazoo in the Pac-12 title game.
Yeah, of course.
It was one of our locks, our double-barreled lock, which failed again. Our locks
Totally
have been
wrong.
bad this year. I also wanted to call something else out, Dan, if I could, just for 1 second.
Please.
Oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby. Lehigh Mountain Hawks, man, 38-14. They get the dub over hated rival Lafayette.
True.
They storm the field.
Yes.
They rip down the goalposts.
Have to.
They walk them over to the raging Lehigh River. They dump the goalposts in the river. I can't tell you how many people were sending me pictures of this.
Yeah.
If I had known about it sooner, I'd have driven to try and find
Is
them.
it still in the river?
I have not seen an update.
Has it been fished out? Okay.
I have not seen an update. What I can tell you is that all of the local news sources here, the local WFMZ
Round the
news
clock,
channel,
cutting into
the
prime
morning
time.
call, every single news source in the Lehigh Valley of Eastern Pennsylvania
Yeah.
was sending out push alerts talking about the goalpost being in the
course.
Lehigh River.
There's a chopper with the big spotlight.
We don't
Just
have
coverage.
choppers like that. We don't have news choppers up here. We're
You
not
don't have
that
news
big.
choppers?
No.
Oh, we got to
Not-
start a GoFundMe.
Not unless Philly sent one up. We don't got any
Okay.
kind of news choppers.
Well, I
around
just
here that
assume
I'm
it
aware
was
of.
Philly, New York. It was you name it, sending the local ones. Continue.
But all that being said, yeah, we had a situation here locally where the goalposts ended up in the Lehigh River, and they've got. I could send you a funny map. Somebody put together a a whole Google Maps thing. This is the Lehigh, the route of the Lehigh goalpost. It went 4 miles, that type of. So there's a lot of stuff going on for them to get it to the river, and for all this excitement to kind of ensue. But a big win for Lehigh for those who care.
So Lehigh is now in the FCS playoffs.
Won the
Pat League.
Won the Pat League. Yeah.
So I think they shared the crown with Holy Cross, but they win the tiebreaker, I believe.
Right.
So which Dakota are we going to go to follow Lehigh on their journey towards FCS glory?
I don't know, man. We got to save the travel budget
That's
here.
true.
We got these playoffs. We could have a Verbol on our hands.
Yes.
All sorts of stuff going on, man.
Can't wait.
Shall we read some tweets?
Would love to.
Roll. Play.
If I'm not me, who the hell am
I?
Annnnd stepping in here, always introing this segment where we ask people once a night, every Saturday, answer this question. I am a blank fan right now. I am feeling blank. Dan, what do we got?
I'm a Florida fan, and I'm thrilled right now. I'm a college football fan, and I woke up feeling the cheesiest. I'm a Virginia fan, feeling defeated. They were not competitive with SMU in the slightest. Wake Forest fan, and at least I'm not a Florida State fan. Again, dozens of points. Florida State, dozens of points. I'm an Iowa State fan, and I'm feeling like nothing can ever be easy. Yeah, that's kind of the Iowa State experience this year.
That sounds about right.
I'm a Virginia Tech fan, and I'm feeling the same way I do 5 to 6 Saturdays per year.
Yeah.
I'm an Oregon fan, and I'm feeling rested. Let me tell you something, Ty. One of the great Saturdays of 2024 for me as an Oregon fan this year. Poor me, I know. I'm a Purdue fan, still glad it's basketball season. Tennessee, thankful we played UTEP this week. Do not overlook the Miners. I'm a Rutgers fan, and I'm feeling like I got my hopes up just long enough to let my guard down and get dropped kick in the bagog again. Okay.
Yeah.
Oregon State, feeling like a champion. Ricky, good on you. I'm a Texas Tech fan. I'm feeling like we survived a 2015 Big 12 shootout today. I'm an ASU fan, and I'm feeling euphoric. I like that. I'm an Arkansas fan. They took down who? Louisiana Tech, I want to say.
35-14.
And I'm feeling the same miserable feeling I feel every single year. I'm a Nebraska fan, feeling optimistic about the offense. Good. That's a great way to go into the offseason.
That's how I felt. I'm not a Nebraska fan, and I felt optimistic about their offense.
I'm a Duke fan. For us, it's not winning is a skill, but rather not losing is a skill. Great.
Hey,
absolutely.
That's
Take
how
what you
golf
can get.
is played, right?
It's
Bogey
exactly
avoidance.
right.
That's what Duke is doing right now.
I'm a Nebraska fan. I feel like we're going bowling.
Wonderful.
Chaos fan, feeling like Stefan with this place has everything. I'm a Virginia fan. We already did Virginia. Chaos fan, and I'm feeling chaos. How about that, Ty?
I like it. I like it. Great commentary from the Verballerhood. Would encourage everybody who is watching this, who is listening to this, to go on out to verballers.com. Not so much to give us your money. If you want to do that, we'll take it.
Yes.
Okay? If you want to help support the show, we appreciate it. It goes a long way. Trust me. But you can sign up to be truly a free member. If you are a free member, you will get access to our poll, our Verballer Top 12 poll. It's going to go live at 8 a.m. Sunday Eastern Time. All are welcome to vote in this poll. No strings attached. You just got to sign up so that you can, get access to the post. But all are welcome to vote in the poll. We want to get as much input as we can. I think it's a really interesting week to open it up. It's why I did it. Oh,
man. Yeah.
Because so much turmoil in the SEC, so much turmoil in that top 12. I want to get as many voices involved in that poll as possible. So all are welcome. You just got to go to verballers.com and sign up just as a free member. That's all. We ask nothing more. You'll get access to that. You'll get an email in your inbox bright and early on Sunday morning.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Vote in the poll, verballers.com. Do we want to do Dude Alerts, Dan?
Let's do some Dude Alerts.
Had a bunch of guys that had incredible individual performances each and every week. We ask for your Dude Alert nominations. Now is the time to read those off. Dan Rubenstein. Who do we got for week 13?
How about Kyle McCord? How about Syracuse? Getting to, I believe, 8-3 for the Franimal, who gets to take another shower. He throws for 470 against UConn. I just kind of want to shout out the weird backward dutiness of Baylor Houston. 7 turnovers in this one, including 3 from each quarterback. I know backward dudes. We got to come up with a name for that, but that's just impressive to me. Let's go. Devin Neal, of course. Cody Simon and Caleb Downs, of course, for Ohio State. Cam Scadaboo all over the place. Ollie Gordon, we got a welcome back on our document.
Welcome back.
Isaac Brown in Louisville's very clean win over Pitt. Pat Bryant going for nearly 200. Derek LeCaptain, which I prefer Le Capitan.
I prefer Le Capitan as well. Derek LeCaptain is a captain for Minnesota.
Only appropriate.
He blocked a punt in this game.
Yeah, should mention Bryson Barnes, the quarterback for Utah State, in a big win over San Diego State, ran for nearly 200 yards. You remember Bryson Barnes?
I do.
Pig farmer, walk-on quarterback for Utah, transferred to Utah State. Good for him. Caleb Johnson, with Iowa down to their 3rd or 4th string quarterback, goes for looks like $164 in a nice clean win against Maryland on the road.
During our stream, by the way, people were chiming in the early part of that Iowa-Maryland game saying he might run for 250 in this game. He was really starting off like a ball of fire.
Charlotte has a receiver named Omega Blake.
Yeah.
And he went for over 200 with 3 tugs for Charlotte in a winning effort over Florida Atlantic. Mekhi Jackson for App State went for 162 in a winning effort against James Madison. And Jaden Higgins, who's quietly been one of the absolute best, I'd probably say all Big 12 first-team caliber receiver for Iowa State. Another crazy impressive game going against, the Utah defense for over 150. An absolute dude.
Wonderful. Thank you to one and all for sending in those dude alerts. We do have your reverbs here loaded up.
Yes.
And ready to go. People dialed in at 855-VERBAL-3. The reverb line continues to be one of my favorites each and every week. It's our way to stay connected to the people, not just through our wonderful Discord, which we do read. We can't always respond, but it's like trying to read the Matrix on game days with so much going on. We would encourage people to check that out at verballers.com as well. Thank you to the community for kind of egging us along here and feeding us with all of these great quips. We appreciate all of that. It has helped us immensely throughout the course of this season. And the reverbs, as I said, are kind of our way of taking the temperature of what's going on out there in the college football ether. So here they are for week 13. Have a listen.
This is Sooner Point from Maryland. While driving to New Jersey today, I stopped off at Yakko's for lunch. Hopefully that will inspire the Sooners to be the Yakko's home dog of the week and beat Alabama tonight. Boomer Sooner.
Hi, this is Ashley.
Yeah, this is Jeff in Missouri.
Hey guys, this is Josh, huge Tennessee fan. I was just going to say, thank you, Florida. Words I never thought I'd say in my life.
Thanking the Greg Schiano and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights for giving early Christmas gift to the Illini. I would call that timeout decision borderline neurotic.
Who's your daddy? Ohio State, apparently.
Looks like Nebraska's finally going to make a bowl game. 15 extra practices. Dylan Raiola finally figured it out. Dana Holgerson saves the day again.
Huskers, bowl bound. All I have to say.
Go Big Red!
So, are we sure that we can't just put Kansas in the playoff?
I'm outside right now putting up posters for a missing BYU team. Last seen, Central Florida. Call me if you can find them.
I'm no doctor, but 11/23/24, 6:40 p.m., late game James has died. Fake punt from his own 34. We are!
So
Dan,
big.
Quick, check to see if Ty is breathing.
Jeremiah Love. Do, 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 do. Go Notre Dame.
Wanted you to know that I'm a fan of the Longhorns and that I woke up feeling the cheesiest. Book 'em.
I just hope that Lane Kiffin is somewhere in the swamp singing Rocky Top all night long, just like he promised. Go Gators.
After the week Tony Elliott's had and the way he has handled this quarterback situation and everything that's gone on, I am officially declaring myself done with Tony Elliott.
I'm living in a constant state of depression because Stanford is never going to beat Cal.
Is the SEC mid? No cap?
I just remember that Utah thought they were going to walk into this conference and win it. That's funny. They're not going bowling now. Good night.
I have hated the last 6 weeks because, as ESPN2 constantly reminded me, my Chippewas have not won since September 28th. But you know what? Nothing will make a Wednesday feel better than a victory over your rival. Fire up Chips.
Start spreading the news. New York City's one true football team, my Columbia Lions, just won their first league title since the Kennedy administration. Roar, Lion, roar.
Dan, Ty, it's after midnight. Cinderella's carriage is now a pumpkin. Get all these teams out of here. They're all trash.
Oh, them
Everyone's bad, Ty.
Everyone's bad. By the way, shout out to the guy who called in and sang Frank Sinatra's My Way for longer than a minute. We could not fit that on. We could not fit that on this rendition of the Reverbs, but I am told it was a rousing performance.
Electric.
It was an electric performance. It was on key. Please call back next time. Sing us another tune. Maybe we'll see if we can work that one in. Those are your weak.
I don't know how much we could play of a copyrighted song.
No.
Yeah.
We can't do that. No. We can't do that.
Yeah.
But if you're singing it, I think probably skirt some copyright rules, or at least some of the algorithms.
I think we can do a solid 3 to 5 seconds.
We can do a tight 3 to 5.
A tight 3 to 5. So where do we stand now? What are your big picture opinions on top 12-ish stuff? We saved it.
How would we rank our top 12 at this point?
Okay, so this is what we know. I don't know if you mentioned this. I zone out sometimes because I'm not very bright. Georgia's now in the SEC championship game, are they not?
Right.
Georgia will be playing the winner of Texas A&M.
Right.
It's that easy, I believe, right?
Right.
So Texas A&M can still play for the SEC championship.
Right.
Because one of their losses was to Notre Dame. So they're a 2-loss SEC team.
Correct.
So Texas A&M can still get into the college football playoff.
Correct.
With a win over Texas and Georgia, which would be super impressive to do with their backup quarterback.
It's a bit of a stretch.
It's a
given the
stretch,
fact that
but
they
everything's
just
a
lost-
stretch.
They just lost to Auburn, but this is the season that we've got in front of us here. It appears as if that's where things are headed in the SEC.
Ohio State wins and they're in against Oregon.
That's
and
correct.
if they lose, Penn State is in.
If they lose, Penn State is in.
Okay.
The Big 12 appears to be a hot mess.
Yes.
We've got a 4-way tie. I would rather still be Arizona State than anybody else at this point.
Yeah.
It seems as if the most likely scenario will be Arizona State against Iowa State, which for all intents and purposes, for those playing the home game,
yeah,
I'm throwing all of my common sayings out here on this one. That would, I think, be a very entertaining game.
I agree.
I think that'd be a hell of a game. And SMU, by virtue of their win, as I said earlier, has clinched a berth in the ACC title game. We are just waiting to see what happens with Miami. Miami is on the road against Syracuse.
Obviously, winning they're in.
Winning they're in. The winners of those 4 conferences will be in the playoff. In all likelihood, we are getting one G5 team in, and I'm guessing it is either going to be Boise State or Tulane. Right now, Boise definitely has the upper hand.
Yeah.
As we are recording this, Fresno is up 21
I was
points.
just going to ask. Okay.
On Colorado State about midway through the third quarter.
Okay, plenty of
which
time.
Which means that Colorado State loses. That sets up a rematch in the conference title game, barring there aren't any other losses or anything, between UNLV and Boise State. That was a very close game the first time they played. There's a strong likelihood we have a close game again. UNLV could be in a position to knock Boise out of the playoff.
That is the Mountain West Championship game, is that home site or in Vegas? I guess it could be in Vegas as a home site.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would have to go back and check.
So the other thing is, now we talk Big Ten, we talk SEC, we talk Big 12, ACC. I am holding out hope that both Arizona State and Oregon can impregnate their respective conferences with Pac-12 championship DNA and collapse the Pac-12 and then just go on and have 2 Pac-12 champions in 2024.
Yeah.
That is my sincere goal at this moment.
The question of at-large teams remains very fluid, and I mean very, very fluid. Penn State right now is in really good position. Penn State just needs to win, and they're in. I like their chances against Maryland, but they got kind of over the big hurdle here this week. Indiana, there was a question coming into this week, coming into this evening, where Indiana would stand, but because of the losses in the SEC, I think it bodes well for Indiana.
I think it clears the way.
I think it clears the path. Notre Dame's in a good spot. They win. Clearly, they are in. This is where things start to get a little bit wonky, Dan. As you get towards the back half of this top 12, you've got teams like Boise. I think it bodes well for a school like an SMU. Obviously, an SMU is going to be...
Well, who is SMU up against in this conversation? Realistically.
Probably teams. I mean, they're up against Miami is who they're up against. But beyond that, in terms of getting in as an at-large, they're up against maybe some 3-loss SEC teams at this point. So if you're counting losses, they would probably have a nod in that department. If you're considering strength otherwise, maybe that's a conversation that the SEC wins. But SMU, I think, has to feel pretty good about where they're at. There is a conversation about Clemson that should Clemson find its way into the ACC title game, they're going to move up by virtue of the fact they won pretty handily over the Citadel and teams in front of them lost. There is a Clemson conversation. There's an Arizona State conversation that I think only takes place if they end up winning the conference. Same is true for Iowa State, but these are also teams that we can't really avoid. What I am finding the most fascinating, why I'm interested in hearing from the Verballerhood on our poll at verballers.com, is because I can get about 7 teams into this thing, and then I have no idea who I am ranking next, nor in what order. There are a lot of teams with more losses than we expected at the start of the season, and that has made for whatever version we consider max chaos, that has made for max chaos here as we enter week 14.
Right. No, I mean, they're going to be, if SMU loses to Miami in a respectful way in a, I don't know, that they are competitive, then you're comparing SMU against Tennessee.
Right.
You're comparing SMU against who exactly?
Exactly.
Clemson?
Yeah.
I think that's probably digging a little bit too deep, and SMU is entering this week as number 13, and they'll have Ole Miss and Alabama fall beyond them, probably, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
So Tennessee has Vanderbilt, Georgia has Georgia Tech, Miami has, once again, Syracuse, yes?
Right, that's right, on the road.
Notre Dame has SC on the road.
That's right.
Indiana has Old Oak and Bucket, Purdue. Penn State has Maryland. Texas has a tough one in A&M. Ohio State has Michigan, though that's in Columbus, yes?
Yep.
And Oregon, of course, has Washington in Eugene. So tough matchups. We're going to see more change, but I don't know. It's taking shape to me. I don't feel like it's going to be that difficult after next week.
We shall see. Again, we would encourage you all to chime in by going to verballers.com, signing up, and voting in our poll that goes live again 8 a.m. Sunday morning on the East Coast. That'll run for about 24 hours or so, and then we'll talk about it on our Thursday preview show. A little bit of a different schedule this coming week because of it being Thanksgiving, because of it, just being a compressed week for a lot of people who are on the road. We are going to take the majority of our Tuesday episode, and we are going to dedicate it to some of the games that are being played earlier in the week. The Egg Bowl, there are a bunch of games on Friday. We'll pick and choose some of our favorites from the earlier games. We will preview those like we would normally on the Thursday episode. And then on Thursday, we'll preview the games that are going to take part on Saturday. A lot to discuss here. We will, of course, do the thing again on Saturday night after week 14, reacting to everything that transpired once we have a good sense for who's going to be playing in those conference title games, how the playoff race is shaking out. That might be a show that sounds a little bit different than this one because we're going to have more playoff discussion that I think we need to get into. But alas, we have finally arrived at this point that we have been warning about for weeks on end. Chaos is here.
Chaos is here.
Great to be in this boat with you, my friend.
Hey, you as well. Mountain West Championship game, home site, whoever has the higher winning percentage in conference.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrandt, thanks again for supporting, for watching, for downloading, for listening, for being part of the Verballerhood. We will talk to you all on Tuesday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.